Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Menino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hey guys, I'm Nariman Hamden, and this is Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We have another awesome guest on today. We have Jay McBain. He's been in the industry for over 20 years. Jay is an accomplished speaker, author, innovator in the IT industry. He has been named Channel Influencer of the Year by Channel Partners Magazine, Top 40 Under 40 by the Business Review, Channel A-List by CRN, Top 8 Thought Leader of Channel Marketing. That I could go on and on with all his recognitions and acclamations. He is also sought out for keynotes through thought leadership and future industry guidance. He has spent his 30-year career in various executive channel sales, marketing strategy roles within IBM, Lenovo, Autotech, Channelize, Forrester, and now Omdia. So how you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, thanks.
I'll let you take over the rest from here. You've got quite the impressive career and acclamations. So why don't we kick things off with, why don't you share with us give us a snapshot of your business right now, what you do and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we're in the analyst world. We look at all industries. So one of the interesting things in the world is if you go to the $115 trillion of world GDP this year, 75% of it will flow through independent third parties, dealerships, agencies, brokers, resellers, retailers, franchisees. It'll flow through groceries, grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies. So all 27 industries, 75% of the entire world flows through indirect ways or channel type of ways. So that's the world I focus on. Your last car was bought from a dealer. Your last TV set was bought from a retailer. Your last jar of peanut butter came from a grocer. Those are kind of the areas of who are these local entrepreneurs, who are these local businesses that represent some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world. And then in between all of that, what are the ways, the people, the processes, the programs, the technology, how does all of that work? Is my little spot in the world, but it represents a really big part of the world.
Sure. I mean, it's got to break down a lot of where those, Fortune 500 products are being sold, primarily out of, or what groups they're in within that state or country or whatnot. So I mean, that's actually kind of fascinating to see where that all comes from and goes in and out from and what affects it. So when you think back, are there any moments that you'd say really changed the game for your career?
Yeah, for me, I spent all 31 years of my career in this part of the market. So I was hired out of college by IBM. Who spent a lot of time with, partners bringing their products, hardware, software, services, products to market through partners of all types. So just as a, fresh out of college kid, I started learning about partnerships, but moved on and I got to be an entrepreneur and build software around partnerships and raise money and go the software entrepreneurial route. Been an analyst now for 8 years. So I get to look at the entire industry, speak on the biggest stages around the world. I think I'm in Vegas, once or twice a week now, speaking on big stages about this topic, because every company now is trying to become this platform company. And the word platform is interesting because it's highly technical. Most companies becoming technology companies, regardless of industry, but it's also synonymous with partnerships. To be a successful platform as a pharmaceutical company, as a financial bank or insurance company, as an automotive company or a tech company, it means that you're partnering in the market successfully with AI companies and with other types of companies that are going to take you to market. So this is what's interesting now is platforms become the buzzword around Wall Street.
Sure.
And the trillion-dollar values that we see at the biggest companies on that list are all platform companies. And this is, where we used to be a little sideshow on a partner day on a breakout session. We're now main stage talking about what integrations mean, what channel and services partnerships, alliances, ecosystems, and all of these different kinds of channels mean to the future of business and the future of how they're valued and their shareholder value that they're all struggling to improve.
Sure. So, how do you deal with taking risks? Is there a time when rolling the dice really worked out for you?
Yeah, so being an analyst, and I think just throughout my life, I've been a system thinker. I don't get overly emotional. I look at everything underneath. When you're going to school, it's built on a system. When you're going to college, it's built on a system. When you join a company, it's all built on a system. So when I look at risk, I don't look at flipping a coin. I don't look at pushing in all my chips on red. I just
Sure.
look at the system underneath it. And what ends up happening is it's always, some percentage. If it's an 80% chance of success, it's not really a risk. It's something that 10 times out of 10 you would do because that's the best information you have at the time. If it's truly a flip of the coin, then you roll back and look at the system and potential outcomes. One of the lucky things when I joined IBM is they were looking for a futurist. So the company had and this was in the early 90s when IBM through the 80s was the biggest company in the world and hiring 10% of all the PhDs in the world. And it was kind of a fun place to work, but they had just figured out that teleportation, kind of like we see on Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty, was
Sure.
possible, and just published a 8,000 page book on it with Harvard and MIT and other places. They figured out that we could network not just computers, but shaking hands with somebody. The electricity between two bodies can be networked. We figured out at the time, and we're just about to play a chess match with Garry Kasparov, the grandmaster who had never lost a match in 1996. So all these things were happening. We needed to talk to students. We needed to go on TV and talk about this. So I took that job. But when I joined the World Future Society, the thing that I was taught really quickly is no one has a crystal ball. But really predicting the future is just looking at today's trends, like trains leaving the station, trying to predict, how fast they're going. And at some point in the future, where are those trains going to be? And it's just kind of looking at that map, and you have a better chance to look at risk when you have all of the facts in front of you or the system underneath how that all works in front of you.
Sure. That's a nice way to simplify it. With using the train analogy, and I guess that makes the whole question of taking a risk. You just explain in a completely more simplified way as opposed to rolling the dice or chips or this and that. So I like that explanation. That was pretty neat. So everyone hits a bump in the road every now and then. Can you share a time that things didn't pan out and how you got through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all go through our careers, and the whole march to the top, if you've ever seen that visual, is never straight. It's not just a set of stairs that you keep climbing. It's really messy. But when I started at a software company and started raising money, and you have these views, and some of the richest people in the world are obviously software founders.
Sure.
And you think like, that this is it. I've got to get to the top here. But when it doesn't work, and the board steps in and removes you as a CEO and founder, you kind of hit rock bottom. And was this me? Was it the product, but I'm in charge of the product? Was it sales and marketing, but I'm in charge of that? The buck stops there. But you realize that when you're, for example, in the tech industry that I was in, 71% of companies fail within 10 years.
Wow.
So when you think about taking a risk, I mean, your chances of success, and when we talk about success of the 29%, it doesn't mean people are running off to be millionaires and billionaires. That's literally the 0.01%. Everyone else, probably the majority of that is just a lifestyle. It can pay the mortgage, and you keep lumping on as you go. So the interesting thing is when you look at the very top, the Fortune 500 companies that we know and love, and we buy their products and we look up to them as companies. If you go back 20 years on the Fortune 500, 52% of the companies no longer exist. And in the Fortune 500, think of all the companies we know and love today. Half of them will not exist in 20 years from now. That's the cycle. So when you think about risk, when you think about systems, when you think about, putting yourself out there, that's kind of the churn rate. And those big companies have a lot of money. They can buy their way out of problems and acquire their way out of problems. You'd think they have the smartest people on the board and the smartest people in the leadership positions, and over half of them fail. Some of them invent the product that ends up killing them. Kodak went finally bankrupt last week.
Wow, that's sad.
Some of them don't make the right choices in channels, like Tupperware went bankrupt this summer because it didn't get into Amazon and Target in time. They thought that we all still go to Tupperware parties.
Right. And
so you start to think about it, and you think about who writes the book about these failures. And it's so easy to blame the CEO or blame the board, who has fiduciary responsibility and things. And you realize that innovator's dilemma, and you realize that there's so much at work. And some companies are just doomed because their industry, collapses around them because of technology or because of something else. So, in this kind of world of risk and world of numbers and systems, you just got to realize that there is never a straight line. And you've got to recover from that. And, again, read the system and try to put yourself in a position of success.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. What's a skill or habit you think doesn't get enough credit for contributing to your success?
I go back to the systems.
Okay.
So, if you're looking to, and I see so many people working, so hard, and there's that common fable, work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
But it's not this idea, like, how do you work smarter? It's understanding some of these, end games. So you start to predict out where these trains are and how they're picking up speed. You're there researching as much as you can about your market, about your buyer, about the demographics, about the firmographics, about there's so many areas that we can get really smart that we can just start to predict, those chances. And being a system thinker, I think, is very, very, kind of underdeveloped in terms of how we understand the world around us. We just think, we keep reading books to say, work harder, work harder. Those that, work 20 hours and sleep at work are the billionaires. Yeah. And I've just got off reading, 5 or 6 books from the early PC days from Bill Gates and Michael Dell and all the billionaires today, smartest, richest people in the world. And the book is just written about, sleeping in the office, not showering for 4 days and stuff. But what wasn't really written was the 50% of that was luck. And then underneath that was the understanding the system underneath that. So they surrounded themselves with the 5 smartest people they could find. They kept changing that group of 5 as they leveled up. These are the, the people that I see the most successful, whether it's in Florida, whether it's nationally or internationally. I just see the same things over and over in terms of outside of luck, what is the things that you can control, to get to success.
Sure. So I'm sure staying on top in any field is tough. What's something exciting you see on the horizon in your industry, and how are you getting ready for it?
Yeah, and it's not just my industry, it's the world.
Sure.
So we've gone through cycles in technology. Those early PC days I just mentioned was a 20-year cycle. Started in August 12, 1981. But by 1999, there was a company called Salesforce.com in San Francisco, a little small company that changed sales forever. Later on, there was a company, AWS, Jeff Bezos, just started selling off excess capacity. He had to build up to Christmas and Black Friday, and every other day only ran at 20%. So he just sold off the other 80%. Just brilliant thinking, but created, again, some of the richest people in the world. That was a 20-year cloud cycle. And now we're entering this 20-year AI cycle. And AI isn't just a technology, as 700 million people who use ChatGPT every day would attest. It changes every role. It challenges every role. 44% of jobs today, people are estimating, can already be taken over by AI that's already shipping. Every truck driver, every retail worker, every fast food worker, they're starting to look job by job by job, through America, through the world, that's already can be done better by AI. So we got to be thinking about this not as a technology trend like a PC was or a mobile phone was, but we got to start thinking about this in our own lives in terms of
Right.
no one's going to be replaced by AI specifically, but they're going to be replaced by somebody using AI. And this
Right.
is the next 20-year cycle. So if you, again, look at the system underneath and start to align yourself to where the trains are going to be, we know that 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to start to shop for a home robot the same way we did for a home computer, back in the 80s or 90s.
Right.
Everybody's going to have one. And we're going to tell our grandchildren one day that, I used to do the dishes and the laundry and mow the grass. And now I've got this Roomba that's really humanoid and smart that just walks around 24/7 looking for things to do. So these are the changes that are coming. That's physical AI. But there's the AI that's coming, all the business data that's around. Every flight you've ever taken sits on a 1970s system called Sabre. Every banking transaction you've ever done sits on an IBM mainframe from the 1970s. When that business data gets trained into ChatGPT and the other models, this changes everything. It's not a chatbot having a friendly conversation with you. It's your entire life with that company or that government being available. So we all have to be thinking about this as both a challenge. I talked about industries collapsing, but also as a competitive advantage. How do I remain 10% better than my competitors? And how can I lean into this next 20-year era and not be one of those, 50% or 70% of companies that don't make it?
Sure. That's a lot to think about there. And I know like a lot of people I have this AI chat with a lot of guests that come on here, and there's people that are saying, oh, it's going to take over everything, it's going to ruin the world. And then there's the ones that are, no, it's not. It's how you use it and utilize it, which I 100% agree. I mean, it's made my job. I mean, I'm able to get more done than I ever have
And there's
because of the help.
naysayers, I'm sure at the invention of fire, the
Right.
wheel, industrial revolution, agricultural revolution, but at every turn in the crank, the integrated circuit,
Sure.
we've all had this fear factor.
Yes.
And now it's like a Skynet, Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back, fear factor in AI because Hollywood has done this. But, in the end, it's going to create all kinds of opportunity.
Yes.
For us to live longer, healthier, happier lives, for us to, get to the next level. But again, embracing it as opposed to being fearful or somehow blocking it is where success is going to lie.
Sure. I 100% agree with that. So, leading a team has its challenges. What's your leadership style? And can you give us an example of how it helped you through a tough spot?
Yeah, so I've led all kinds of teams over the course of 30 years, as a manager, a director, a CEO. But, leadership is really about others. If others are inspired, if others can do their best work, if you can create a culture and set a tone and set a vision that everybody can chase, those are the best leaders. Leadership is not by fear. That's very short term. Leadership isn't by command and control. Leadership isn't by protecting information or building out Machiavellian type of strategies. The best leaders are the ones that people will always look to. Their best boss or their best manager they ever had. A lot of times has those same type of tactics which just somebody that would lead from the front. Going into battle, they'd be the first one running in, and the person that was there to protect the team at all costs and celebrate the team at all costs.
Sure.
That's what's always been successful. And I get to see, again, in my world, I see millions of entrepreneurs running these hyper local businesses that represent the big businesses. But I get to see that as well. You see all types of leadership. You've read about all types of leadership. There's a million books on leadership.
Yes, there is.
Over and over again, if I ever asked you who your best boss, who your best manager ever was, it would come back to qualities, probably that I just pointed to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you're building your dream team, what's the one trait you always look for and why?
Yeah. For me, it's interesting. I mean, I love system thinkers. I love people that, may not have the best resume, They may not have the perfect, set of skills, but as long as you understand what kind of skills can be developed, what kind of skills can be learned, as opposed to, what we used to think, what you're born with.
Sure.
But so many times, that best resume, the perfect person that fits a job perfectly is never the right fit. It goes back to, some intrinsic skills, motivation, this ability to learn, this ability to serve customers, this ability to give yourself. And then the actual role itself, some pieces of that can be learned. And I'm not saying, go hire somebody in marketing for your CFO. And I'm not saying, go hire, somebody in engineering to be your, head of marketing. But again, we spend a little bit too much time, I think, on resumes and a little bit less time on, what the actual things are that make people successful. And that comes into hiring.
Absolutely. And actually talking to them and seeing what they've worked on, hearing what they've worked on, having that discussion with them to see how their mind works and where it fits
And
properly.
then go ask the 5 people around them.
Yes.
It's this kind of crowdsourcing the answer.
Yeah.
Go talk to the last 10 customers that they've served. And it could have been poorly. Like it could be a customer success issue, customer experience issue. But in the end, go talk to them and you're going to find out. Go talk to the 10 colleagues that they've had. Don't just talk to their boss who they might have hidden a bunch of things and managed upwards, because that's so many times what happens. When somebody manages upwards, the people around them see that and they become toxic.
Sure.
And in the end, whether it's sports or whether it's business, anything that relies on teams, just go ask the team. Go ask their competitors. Go outsource the answer, and it comes through really, really quickly. And that's what you can't hide. You can hide things on your resume, but you just can't hide the way you've served customers, the way you've served your team, the individual you are.
Yeah, the human interaction and service. So let me ask you this. How do you encourage your team to think outside the box and bring new ideas to the table?
Well, I think having your finger, I'm going to repeat system again, having your finger on your role, having your finger on the market that you're in, and every day being very connected to all the things that are happening. I mean, it's absolute chaos. The noise and clutter is deafening. But what makes better teams is, no one can be an expert in everything. If you go back to the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, what you want is people spending 10,000 hours thinking about their specific role and where they are and how to get better from that system type of thinking. So curiosity is so important when you hire. Curiosity is so much part of the team. And, I would want my team and expect my team to come in and say, hey, given what's happened this week, this month, this year, have we thought about ABC? Did you see our competitors made these moves? Let's talk them through. Let's A/B test. Let's maybe pilot some things. Let's go test some things in the market. Let's be ready to fail. But curiosity kind of leads that question, which is let's just not put ourselves, for the half of companies that fail, most of them get rutted. This didn't work in the past, or this is the way it's always been. And that's usually the common theme to companies that fail, is they're just not ready to change in everything that's happening and ready to, flush that down the toilet and start fresh,
right?
In new ways that are proven in the market.
Sure. So it's being fearful and just not open to new ideas and new strategies to be able to keep up with the rest of the companies and world, and if you just stay in that tunnel vision, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. So I mentioned, and I'll just kind of as a final thing, when I mentioned Jeff Bezos, he came into a meeting and for the first time, ever, kind of said, well, if somebody's telling me I know nothing about servers, I know nothing about storage, I know nothing about networking, I built a book, company, the biggest one in the world, but I do know, and you're telling me that all this money we spent is sitting idle. It's sitting at 20% capacity every day. until Black Friday or until, Prime Week, I guess it is, and Christmas.
Sure.
Like there's a few blips on the radar. But are you telling me like 80% of my investment is just sitting there wasted? Yes, sir. Well, could we lease out or could we rent out that 80% on the days that we're not busy? Because everybody else, I'm sure flower shops on Mother's Day could use that capacity and we could save them money because they don't have to build to their biggest day. What if we, went to dentists? What if we went to accountants and lawyers? What if we went to everyone and asked them about their busiest day? And said, well, what if you didn't have to go buy all the equipment for your busiest day and then sit at 20% idle for the rest of the year? That elasticity became a new product, but everyone in the room laughed at him. Didn't laugh because he was CEO, but kind of who would come up with something as strange as that?
Right.
Nobody would do that. Nobody would give their data to the cloud. Nobody would trust their data, business data going to somebody else, especially a big retailer.
Sure.
And he kept pushing that curiosity and finding people that would go and understand the system underneath, go talk to customers, pilot. And guess what? There was a massive demand because overnight you could save millions of dollars because you didn't have to go buy to your busiest day.
Sure.
And today that market, the AWS themselves are 140 billion, but that market is 400 billion.
Wow.
Just in servers. But the cloud itself is now $1 trillion. It created a 20-year window of which 50% of companies didn't survive through. So that's the curiosity. And, getting told no and getting laughed at, and, that's not the way it's always been done. And no one's going to follow that path. Sometimes it takes somebody from the outside to go and, press on and be persistent.
Absolutely.
On dumb ideas.
Right. Absolutely. So what's a day in your life look like and how do you juggle work and everything else?
Yeah, people think because I'm in speaking and all over the world, recording podcasts and things like that, they think my day spans, 16 or 20 hours, and it doesn't. I have an absolute normal work week, maybe even less hours than most people would expect. But again, it's understanding the system, understand exactly what needs to be delivered, compartmentalize how it gets delivered, and not overwork in places that don't have an outcome. So I get to speak to, in 30-minute increments, some of the leaders in the world, but I'll move from working with, an AWS, Microsoft, IBM, Cisco, really big companies. The next phone call will be with a cybersecurity startup in Israel with 5 people in a garage. I say yes to almost everything. And so I get to learn right across the board. Every country, every industry, every segment of the market, that just, for me, that's my system. So when I can come up with an example like AWS, it's from working deeply within that organization for years and years and years and understanding. So that's what a day in my life is, just 30-minute increments. I go to bed with 0 inbox, even though I get, 1,000 messages a day across LinkedIn and all the things, but I don't go to bed until my phone has no red circles on it. Doesn't mean I solve for all those things. It just means that I contain all those things and, manage day by day under control inside the system that's, beneath my job.
Sure. So has there been a book, a podcast, or someone that's really changed your outlook or approach?
Yeah, I think the book probably most important to me, another Canadian author, Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point, talked about the law of a few, which again is systematic. Talked about the story of Paul Revere, kind of the start of the United States. Having a Canadian explain it was good. But that was 10,000 hours to become an expert on something. So much was in that book on how to make something tip, how things actually go viral. It can be an idea, it can be a product, it can be a thing. But for me, it was a way to start thinking, if you're seeing me on video, you see a bunch of things behind me. They're all system things. What people read, where they go, who they follow, how many of this, how many of that. All these questions can be answered and they can be listed. It's not theory. There's not any frameworks or not any really fancy PowerPoint slides with flywheels on them. It's all names, faces, and places. And when you get to that level, that's the answer to the system in my job.
Interesting. Excuse me. How do you tackle learning new things, especially stuff that's way outside of your comfort zone?
I'm immersed every day. Those thousand things that are coming in are shouting at me in all different ways in terms of what the news of the day. You wake up yesterday to a bad jobs report. You wake up to a $1 trillion pay package for Elon Musk. You connect that to the robots I was talking about, and then you connect that jobs report back to, is this an AI thing that we're talking about? 44% of jobs getting replaced, or is it geopolitical, economic? So again, you're almost a student of the chaos.
Sure.
But you got to take all of the noise and clutter down to things that are important and dots that you can connect because you spent the 10,000 hours in each of these spots, and go and communicate those to the world of millions of people that care. Again, you're not smarter than anyone as an analyst. You've just spent more time because they have a day job that you don't have. So when you can communicate things, you become important to other people in terms of saving them 10,000 hours.
Right.
The more people you can do that to, the more people you can be important to, again, is the outcome to growing in the system that I now work in. So that's how it is. It's just kind of organizing chaos, cutting through the noise, and getting to things that help businesses and help people, make decisions. The system underneath their lives. Part of that is understanding these trends and getting people that spend the time that they just don't have the luxury of spending.
Right. Or the capacity of understanding. So that's where you come in and break it all down.
Yeah.
Boy, your mind works. You've got a very interesting mind, taking with the systems and how you work. I mean, I look at you and I just see a bunch of map lines going every which way, which is pretty neat.
Well, it's a bunch of lists. Somebody asks, what's your favorite music? I've got my top 800 songs in order on my website. What are your favorite movies? I've got them all in order. So everything in my life, jmcbain.com if you wanted to see it, but it's everything just laid out. 102 countries I've been to. The travel plans with bringing my kids to all these countries and 7 continents and 7 wonders of the world and all this, it all becomes a system. Because I know there's 193 countries and I have only 91 left to go to. I just drove through my 50th state, so I know I'm done the states, but I still have, of the 63 national parks, I still have 25 to go to. So it's a system of lists. There's a system of record underneath everything that's a hobby or your work.
Sure. I'm sure your wife must love you. Your house must be extremely organized.
Not as organized as you think, but I wouldn't suggest systems also go to organization, but it does go, to other things. Every dollar spent in my life, every picture ever taken, every document scanned, right from the first day of school, my first book report, my first report card, everything I can find within 5 seconds.
Wow, that's impressive. Well, it sounds like things are going very well for you and your business. As you're looking into the future or towards the future, I'm wondering if or how you create passive income, or if you have invested in the past. You mentioned where every number is, and so do you invest in passive income? What are some of the investments that you invest in?
Yeah, I mean, I've been investing since 11 years old. And one of the things about spending 10,000 hours in each of these different spots is recognizing the fastest growing companies, not just today, but who's going to be in your 401k, for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever your outlook is, who are going to be the winners and losers. And if you spend all day thinking about winners and losers and 52% of them are going to be losers, you start to build a system around your investments. For work-life balance, traveling the world and having hobbies and stuff, I'm not the passive income, 12 side gigs at night type of person. I decided early on, I didn't want to be a billionaire, but I've publicly written that, I want to retire with 10 million, and here's exactly how it's going to happen. And, again, you can go read that in your spare time, but again, it's putting that out in the world like The Secret, putting that in the world, but then also a plan. and daily, weekly, monthly measurements on how to get to that plan. And again, with that as a goal, it doesn't mean that I have to go and run 12 side gigs or
Sure.
have a bunch of other influencer revenue or something. I just got to set myself in a position, to make the goal that I've set out.
Got it. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I have really enjoyed your time and you sharing your insights and breaking down how systems work so simply. That was pretty amazing. If anyone wanted to get a hold of you, how does one get a hold of you? How do they get your list of music, travels, your personal systems?
Mhm. There you go. So it's those things are on McBain, JaymcBain.com. In my business life, you can go to omdia.com. But in terms of getting to me, I mean, whether it's a LinkedIn message, a Facebook message, a tweet, email, whatever it is, again, I don't go to bed with any red circles on my phone. So I'll be likely to see it. And if I can help you, quickly, I will make those connections.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share your story and your insights with our viewers. And thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.